Hi, I'm Dave Sammut, Mentor and Coordinator for the RACI's Careers Development Program. I'm here today with my very good friend Philip Abraham, Senior Vice President of Asia for Veolia, one of the world's major international companies working in waste and water management and energy services. I believe actually the largest company in this field, with over 250,000 employees worldwide. I had the privilege of working with Philip when he first immigrated to Australia, which was a while ago, and then watching his career take off and eclipse mine over the years that have followed. So, Philip, to start with, can you give us a rundown of your career?
At the very beginning, Dave, it's great to be here and thank you for the opportunity. I consider it as a privilege to be not only talking to you but addressing the topic. So yes, in terms of coming to Australia, I started off in India in academics. After my PhD, I worked teaching for a while. So I came into Australia, was looking out for work in the same area of work in terms of my expertise. Was finding it very difficult to get in. And then I decided to try and volunteer some of my time to just break into the Australian workforce. Joined the University of New South Wales in an honorary capacity and worked with a lovely professor there. And while there, met with Don Billington, who interestingly you know very well. And through Don, I got introduced to a person who was running the R&D team of a copper hydrometallurgy company. And that person is none other than David Sammut. And he was the first person who actually gave me a chance to work in the Australian workforce. And for that I'm always grateful today, because I think as a fresh immigrant, I think you sometimes need to have the person who can see there is something that you have that's worth giving back to the Australian society. So it was through Dave that I first got into the Australian workforce, worked with him for a couple of years, and then moved to Veolia. Again, there's a funny story there, again, because of Dave, and maybe we should get into that a little later. I've had a fantastic run, and I'm more than happy to share some of the things that worked and didn't work in our conversation today.
I guess the obvious question is, are you still known as Dr. Sludge at Veolia?
The funny thing is, in Australia, yes, I was known as Dr. Sludge, but in France you have a peculiarity which I think is quite interesting to know in terms of culture. It's only the general practitioners who are called doctors there. So that went completely off the radar for 10 years that I was in France. So no, I dropped the not only the doctor part but also the sludge part, which is a bit of a relief in some ways.
All right, we've already really answered the second question I was going to ask, which was how did you get your start in Australian industry? But it's worth noting at home. Now, people who have watched other webinars know that I often talk about the greatest candidate that I've ever had, the best prepared candidate who had the job before I ever walked through the door, and for the record, that's Philip. So what were the biggest lessons that you learned as a skilled immigrant?
I'd like to wind back on your previous question, Dave, because I think I didn't answer that fully. So one of the things that I think we need to realize is that you just can't sit back and hope that things will fall in your lap. You need to go and get it. And that's, I think, one of the good things that I did. I actually went into the University of New South Wales to just find out how I could do something else in terms of qualifying myself for the Australian environment, because I'd done my PhD in India. And I realized that I had to get into the workforce and do something relevant to the Australian scenario. So by going there, volunteering my time, that's how I actually met with John, who was a wonderful gentleman with a large heart, who told me that he had his son-in-law who was actually looking out for a chemist, and that son was none other than Dave. And then by doing the interview, and again, David mentioned that I was the best prepared candidate, but I think one of the things that gets you comfortable in an interview is to realize that you don't need to know everything, but there are many things that you know, and you need to bring that out in the interview. And that's all that I did. I by no means know everything or the most intelligent person on earth, but when you go in with the confidence that you don't need to know everything, but the things that you know, you articulate them clearly and try to relate yourself to the person asking the questions to understand what they're looking for, and then matching what you bring to the table to the needs of the organization. And I think that's what probably made a difference. And again, I think I consider myself really fortunate to have been interviewed by Dave, because he was an open-minded person, and I think that goes to some of you young people who start out interviewing people, have an open mind, because on the other side of the table there's always someone who can offer something. And I think it was largely because of the largeness of heart and mind that Dave had that those opportunities opened up for me. So I know it's a long answer, but I think I need to put that on record that a lot of what comes out within human beings is when we have an open mind and a heart. And, I think the fact that Dave is even doing all that he does for the RACI is just sort of augments what I've just said.
All right, be careful, you'll make me blush. So, what were the biggest lessons that you learned as a skilled migrant coming to Australia?
So the biggest lesson that I learned in terms of that is actually an interesting story. When I went to donate blood for the first time, and I had been doing that for a few years in India, the lady actually looked up from my records and said, is this the first time you've donated blood? And I said, no, I've done that quite a few times. And she said, but you're not on our records. And I said, no, it wasn't here, it was in India. And she said, oh, okay, that doesn't count. And she gave me a sticker which she plastered on my chest which said, my first blood donation. And for me, actually, that was a very symbolic moment in my life where I realized, and I had to accept the fact that a lot of what we did in the past life probably doesn't count. It doesn't count on paper, but as you work and as you bring your life's experiences with you, you translate that into something that brings value to you. But I think you need to be prepared for the hard grind to realize that, yes, for some people, what you have done in your past will not matter. And it's not something to feel bad about, it's something to know that's probably quite normal for people to think that way. And once you adapt that lesson, I think life becomes a lot more easier to handle. And I think that was a really big lesson that I learned, that, okay, I've come with qualifications, but more important is the fact that I need to show that I can deliver on what I bring with me. And as I said, to accept the fact that you can't rest on your laurels and expect people to understand everything that you've done and relate it back to your current environment. I think that was the biggest learning lesson that I had, to sort of reset the counter, but not feel bad about it, but then to then build on that later, because that never goes away.
That's quite an insight. So what did you have to learn the hard way?
So learning the hard way was probably this, and the other thing that I think you need to always keep at the back of your mind is that you need to know your strengths and your weaknesses. You need to know exactly what you bring to the table and feel comfortable about that. I'm not asking you to just accept your weaknesses and do nothing about it, but once you know that you have your strengths, try to develop those and realize that when you have, everyone's going to have something that you've got to learn. So use your weaknesses as your learning experiences, and that's when you become better and strong as a person as well.
Excellent. Now, you've worked in 4 different countries. You've been in India, Australia, France, and now Hong Kong.
Mm-hmm.
That's 4 very different cultures. What techniques have you developed to move between workplaces?
So more than techniques, it's actually it's the mindset. I have another interesting story. My son. Now, when we moved to Paris, actually it was on a holiday. It was about 10 years old, as we were actually driving around the streets of Paris, we stopped at a stops red light, and in Paris, those of you who are familiar with the city, you would realize that you have the big set of traffic lights, and on the same post are smaller traffic lights, exactly the same, but they are actually much smaller. And he looked at me and said, "Papa, why do we have this? Is it because people in Paris are really short?" So that was the logic of a 10-year-old. So then I explained to him that it's not because people are short, but it's because you stop at the stop line, unlike Australia where you stop 30 meters away from the stop line so you can see the lights. When you stop at the stop line, because Paris is a more compact city, you need to have the set of traffic lights that are at your level. So I use that lesson a lot to tell young people that when you go into a new place, try not to classify things as good or bad. Understand the logic behind how things work and say they're different. When you change your mindset and not try to say that, oh, this is bad, this is not how it's what I'm used to, then you stop learning. But when you keep your mind and curiosity open and say, why are the traffic lights here? Is it because people are short, or is there something else behind that thing for you to learn? When you do that, you really embrace the local culture and you learn so much. And I think that also gives you the skills to adapt to the new culture, because you've not sort of shut yourself out and said, oh, this is strange, I don't want to be part of this. And I think that's something that has really helped me in not only adapting, but learning and enjoying the whole experience of working in multiple cultures, because every culture brings something different and something worth learning.
Absolutely. So what are, in your experience, the major differences between the Australian and the international workplaces?
Right. So the thing about the Aussie culture is, I say this, that I think we are more or less a 0 and 1 society. So when you go into the visa office, for example, when the man or woman at the other side of the counter tells you that, no, this is not going to work, it will not work because there's something wrong with your file. But in France, for example, everything is negotiable. So when you hear a no, you don't take a no and walk away. You stay and you listen. I mean, there was a clinic actually quite near where I lived in France, and I used to go for a periodic blood checkup. And whenever I went in on Saturday, he told me, no, it's not possible. You can't do it today. And the first time it happened to me, I walked away. But then I stood back and asked him, please, because I'm working, this is the only thing. Have you fixed an appointment? And I said, no. And then they said, next time we'll fix an appointment. So when I tried to fix an appointment, they said, on Saturdays, you don't need to fix an appointment. So you need to realize that you can't bring all of what you learn in Australia into another country. Because if that's the case, then you'll miss out on a lot. So the thing about the main difference that I see is that it's really easy to work in Australia. It's a pleasure to work in Australia. It's the relief almost when you come back here, because being a 0-1 society, it's very easy to figure out what works and what doesn't. But when you work in another country where there's not only a 0, there might be a -0.5 or a +1.5, you need to learn to move across the scale of people's working habits and cultures. And that's really a valuable lesson that I learned, that you just, if you want to be, and there are advantages in also being a 0-1, because sometimes in France, you just pretend as if you don't know another scale exists, and sometimes you can get stuff done by saying, just do it, there's no other way of doing it, and I'm sorry, I don't know any other way. So by actually knowing the different cultures and knowing that Australia comes with a lot of strengths, but then you need to also adapt that a little when you live in another place, because otherwise you could get burnt, because people will find you inflexible, and you wouldn't be able to achieve as much unless you're able to move around a little on the scale of negotiation.
That's very interesting. That's quite an insight. I might keep that in mind for my future travels. Have I been 2, 0 and 1 when I've been in France? All right, so what do you wish you knew at the beginning of your career?
One of the things that I really felt when I was a young person was it's quite lonely out there. And that's where I mean, before we started the interview today, we chatted about the mentorship program, and I think it's one of the best things I've heard, and it's so important and valuable for young people. So, I think you're really lucky to have this going for you. I think it comes with, you are privileged to have this mentorship program. I'm speaking to the mentees here. And as a person who was, as a young person trying to find my place in the workforce, often I felt lonely that I didn't have a go-to person. On the other side of that is, if I may just throw in a piece of advice, is that with your privilege comes responsibilities as well. So, make use of every second and every moment that you have in your mentorship program and take everything that you can. And also remember that you need to have the largeness of heart that David Sammut has, for example, in giving back to the society that you're taking from. And I think that's really, really important. As a young person, I wish I had the mentors that you have made available to the people in this program. And David, an absolute pleasure knowing you all these years. And again, thank you for all that you've done for me.
Thank you very much. You are embarrassing me. And look, I would say my doctor would agree. I've got a very large heart. I eat entirely too many fatty foods. So, what advice would you have to offer in particular to the many international students seeking to stay and work in Australia?
Yeah, I think it's really important that we integrate into the society that we decide to live in. And I don't mean just migrating. I even think when you go on a work assignment or a study assignment, it's great to take your culture with you, but it's also important to understand the local culture. And it's also important to be part of the local culture, especially for those of you who take up citizenship. You need to take up citizenship when you really believe in it, and not just because you need a convenient passport. And you need to relate to the place that you live in. And once you do that, it brings a lot to you. And as I said before, it's a privilege to be in Australia and to work in Australia. And remember, again, I'd like to emphasize, with privileges comes responsibilities as well. So this is something that I really feel passionate about, that you can bring your culture and know the roots that you come from, but it's equally important that you assimilate the culture and be part of the local culture that you've decided to live in. And I think that's sometimes not understood well enough, that the value that brings. And I think that can make your life a lot more easier and a lot more pleasant and pleasurable while you work.
Excellent. Well, Philip, thank you very much for your time today. Now, everybody, this has been another webinar from the Iraqi Careers Development Program. Through webinars, networking events, mentoring, lectures and workshops, the Iraqi Career Development Program aims to help graduating students get the best possible start in their careers. So look out for our materials on YouTube and on the Iraqi website, raci.org.au. Thanks for today.
Thank you.